Welcome back to The Deep Dive, the show that really tries to cut through the noise and get you straight to the core insights.
Yeah, absolutely.
Today, we're taking a really deep plunge. We're going into a world where human decisions aren't always about cold, hard logic. Not at all.
Right. It's more about intuition, emotion, and sometimes behavior that looks irrational that is actually predictable.
Exactly. That's the world Daniel Kahneman and his collaborators, especially Amos Tversky, unveiled. It fundamentally reshaped how we understand ourselves, our choices, especially when facing risk.
And our focus today is digging into those profound insights, specifically around the framework that won Kahneman the Nobel Prize, prospect theory. We're looking at how people actually make decisions under risk and uncertainty.
Yeah, not how theory says they should.
Precisely. It's a huge challenge to that old classical economic idea of the, perfectly rational person always maximizing utility. This is a descriptive model. It shows what we do.
And it's not just theory, right? This stuff has massive implications. Finance, policy, even personal ethics. It's everywhere once you start looking.
It really is.
So our mission today is to illuminate these key ideas, give you a kind of shortcut to understanding this body of work that, frankly, changed entire fields. We'll unpack core concepts like loss aversion, the certainty effect.
Using real-world examples from the sources we've gathered to really get at what drives our behavior beyond just pure, simple rationality.
Okay, so we'll start with the hidden mental machinery, then see how it clashes with economic assumptions, especially about risk, and finally look at how understanding these patterns can actually help us make better decisions.
Sounds good. Let's dive into the fabric of our thinking first, the cognitive architecture.
Okay, let's unpack this. Kahneman's early work, it sort of hinted at different ways we think, didn't it? Almost foreshadowing the later System 1 and System 2 idea.
It did. The sources mention intuition as an informal way to reach a conclusion, covering, quote, anything but a computation.
Which basically means, like, a huge chunk of our everyday judgments aren't slow, careful calculations, they're quick, gut feelings.
Exactly. And this evolved into that famous distinction, System 1 versus System 2. System 1 is the fast one, automatic, intuitive, effortless.
Like recognizing a face instantly
Oh,
or finishing a common phrase.
right. Bread and sound.
Sure, see.
Yeah.
Effortless, that's System 1.
That's it. It's running constantly in the background, making quick sense of the world.
And then you've got System 2, slow, deliberate, effortful, like doing your taxes or analyzing a complex argument.
That's the one that feels like conscious thought, like you making the decisions. But here's the kicker Kahneman highlighted.
System 1 is always feeding suggestions, intuitions, feelings to System 2.
Uh-huh. And System 2, well, it's kind of lazy. It often just goes along with System 1's suggestions without really checking them.
So our gut feeling often dictates what our rational mind thinks it chose carefully. That's kind of mind-bending.
It is. And think about it for yourself, That time you met someone new and had an instant feeling about them, or sized up a situation in a split second.
Yeah, happens all the time.
That's System 1. But the big question Kahneman's work raises is, how accurate is that snap judgment? How often does it lead us right versus leading us astray, especially with risk involved?
Because that quick, intuitive system isn't always built for complex, modern problems, particularly involving probability and statistics.
Precisely. That contrast is fundamental. It's the engine room for our, well, predictable irrationality.
And it gets even more interesting because feelings play a huge role in that fast System 1 thinking, the affect heuristic.
Right, yes, exactly. The idea that our current mood, our overall happiness, significantly shapes how we judge risks and benefits. It's like an emotional filter.
So it's not just that being happy makes you optimistic in general.
It's more specific. Research, like Finnegan's work mentioned in the sources, shows that when you're feeling good, you actually perceive risks as being lower and benefits as being higher.
And the opposite if you're feeling down.
Right. Same situation, same objective facts. But if you're in a bad mood, the risks loom larger and the potential benefits seem smaller. Your perception literally changes.
Wow. So if I just closed a big deal, I might look at a risky new venture and think, yeah, the upside is huge, the risk is manageable.
Uh-huh. But if you just had a major setback, that same venture might look terrifyingly dangerous with very little potential reward.
Even if the numbers haven't changed one bit.
Exactly. It's not just mood affects decisions. It's that mood structurally alters our perception of the inputs to the decision, the risks and benefits themselves. It really complicates the idea of objective rational assessment.
Yeah, it makes pure rationality seem, well, a lot harder to achieve than we think.
And this emotional overlay often bumps up against how we try to process data, leading to another cognitive trap, the law of small numbers.
Ah, right. This is the idea that we tend to see patterns everywhere, even in tiny bits of data.
Exactly. We have this incredibly strong tendency to believe that small samples are representative of the bigger picture. We overinterpret streaks and clusters, mistaking randomness for meaning. Our brains just hate randomness.
They want a story, they want causality.
They really do. The sources mentioned this leads to a misperception of random sequences. The classic example from Dilovich, Volony, and Tversky is the hot hand in basketball.
Oh, yeah, everyone knows that one. A player makes a few shots in a row.
And everyone, fans, coaches, teammates, maybe even the player starts to believe they're hot, that they're more likely to make the next shot.
It feels so real, right? Like they've got momentum.
It feels incredibly real. But the statistical analyses, they consistently show that, for the most part, the probability of making the next shot is independent of the previous ones. It's basically random fluctuations. Streaks happen in random sequences.
But our intuition screams that there's a pattern, a cause.
Precisely. It shows how badly our statistical intuitions, as Kahneman called them, can mislead us. We draw confident conclusions from way too little evidence.
And we underestimate just how much is down to pure chance. This has got to have big consequences in, like, investing or medical diagnosis.
Huge consequences. You see a couple of successful investments, you think you've found a foolproof strategy, or a doctor sees a couple of unusual cases close together and assumes an epidemic. It's system one, imposing order where none might exist.
So putting this together, intuition, emotion shaping, risk perception, misinterpreting randomness, it points towards this idea of predictable irrationality.
Right. And while Kahneman himself might have quibbled with the term irrational sometimes, his perspective aligns strongly with it. The key word is predictably.
It's not just random errors. We make the same kinds of errors in similar situations.
Exactly. The sources note Kahneman found Dan O'Reilly's view in predictably irrational to be not much different from mine. That's a significant nod. It validates that these deviations aren't just quirks, they're systematic. They follow patterns.
Like consistently underestimating how long projects will take. The planning fallacy.
That's a perfect example. It's a systematic, predictable error. And understanding these predictable patterns is the foundation for behavioral economics, and especially for prospect theory's insights into risk.
Yeah, it explains why people make choices that seem illogical from a purely economic standpoint.
It does. And once you see the pattern, you can start to think about how to deal with it.
Which leads us perfectly into the next part. How does this clash with traditional economics, especially when we're talking about risk and, the rational actor?
Right. Because classical economics had this bedrock assumption.
Homo economicus, the rational economic actor, always making choices to maximize utility, minimize loss, perfectly logical, right?
That was the model. Perfect information, perfect calculation, unwavering self-interest focused on maximizing outcomes.
Yeah.
But even way before Kahneman, people noticed cracks in that facade.
Like Keynes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
John Maynard Keynes made this incredibly astute observation about labor markets. He said, "Ordinary experience tells us that a situation where labor stipulates for a money wage rather than a real wage is the normal case."
Meaning workers care more about the number on their paycheck than their actual purchasing power.
Pretty much. He noted it might seem illogical to resist a cut in your money wage, even if prices fall so your real wage stays the same or improves, but not resist inflation eating away at your real wage if the money number stays the same. Yet Keynes said, experience shows that this is how labor in fact behaves.
That's fascinating. It's all about the framing, isn't it? A nominal pay cut feels like a direct loss, even if you're not actually worse off.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It's a perfect early glimpse of what Kahneman and Tversky would later formalize as loss aversion. We feel the pain of a loss much more acutely, roughly twice as much, their research suggested, than the pleasure of an equivalent gain. That nominal wage cut feels like a loss, hitting that aversion hard.
So even if objectively it makes no difference, psychologically it feels terrible.
Right. And if, as Keynes saw, even fundamental economic players like labor aren't acting purely rationally based on real outcomes, but are swayed by these psychological factors like loss aversion.
Then the whole rational actor model needs a serious update, especially when risk is involved.
Exactly. It showed the classical model was missing a huge piece of the puzzle: human psychology, particularly our asymmetric reaction to gains and losses. That's where prospect theory steps in.
And this becomes crystal clear when you look at finance and investing. Places where rationality is supposed to rule.
You'd think so.
Yeah.
But then you have what Burton Malkiel calls the speculative bug. So many investors are just incurably smitten with trying to pick the winning stocks, trying to beat the market.
Even though Malkiel points out the odds are really stacked against you.
Yeah, and crucially that past records are far from reliable guides to future performance.
Mm-hmm.
But people ignore the statistics. They crave the savor, the excitement, the dream of winning big.
That sounds like prospect theory in action too, overweighting small probabilities of huge gains, like buying a lottery ticket.
Absolutely. That desire for a potential jackpot, however unlikely, can override a rational assessment of expected value. And maybe also being risk-seeking to avoid the loss of missing out on a big win.
And it's not just the thrill. Howard Marks brings up ego.
Oh, ego is huge in investing. Marx says it leads to imprudent decisions to bear increased risk, especially when things are going well.
Right, in good times.
Yeah.
Because you start thinking you're a genius.
Exactly. Overconfidence kicks in. You attribute successes to your own skill, not luck or a rising market. And you take on more risk than you should. That's the optimism bias, too, underestimating the potential downsides.
Marx also mentions herd mentality. Most investors end up chasing the crowd.
Yeah, driven by short-term results and comparing themselves to others. That fear of missing out FOMO is incredibly powerful. It taps right into loss aversion. The loss here is the gain your neighbor is bragging about.
That people pile in when things are hot and sell when things crash. The exact opposite of rational buy low, sell high.
It's a potent mix. Social proof, loss aversion. It overrides objective analysis for so many people.
And these aren't just small individual quirks. Look at the examples from The Big Short by Michael Lewis. We're talking major institutions, top executives.
Stark examples. AIG financial products, for instance. They were warned about the subprime mortgage mess, but stayed massively exposed through credit default swaps.
Basically, insurance they sold betting against defaults on incredibly risky mortgages.
Right. And even when they supposedly changed their mind about the market direction, they didn't unwind their existing massive $50 billion exposure. They just left it there. A trader quoted couldn't understand why they left themselves so exposed.
What explains that? Inertia, hoping it would somehow be okay.
Probably a mix. Status quo bias, sticking with what you have, and definitely loss aversion. Unwinding those positions would mean realizing a huge loss immediately. Psychologically easier to hope things turn around, even against the evidence.
And then there's Steve Eisman's experience, finding bank CEOs who literally didn't know their own balance sheets regarding subprime risk.
His epiphany. Oh my God, he's dumb. It wasn't instead judgment. It was fundamental ignorance, driven by likely massive overconfidence and maybe the availability heuristic, only focusing on the good news, ignoring the complex risks buried in the details.
Just stunning incompetence at the top.
And look at Howie Hubler, the bond trader Lewis profiled. He trusted the ratings. Those AAA ratings slapped onto bundles of risky subprime mortgages, the CDOs.
He ignored the fact that diversifying garbage doesn't make it gold.
But pretty much. He ignored the pretense, as Lewis put it, that these weren't all correlated risks doomed to fail together. He anchored hard on that AAA rating.
So anchoring bias, maybe confirmation bias, looking for reasons to trust the rating?
Definitely looks like it. Relying on a simple heuristic, AAA means safe, instead of doing the hard analytical work. Catastrophic results.
And it's not just finance. Paul Krugman points out this common belief among business executives.
Yeah, that a country getting loads of foreign investment must be about to run big trade surpluses. Even though basic economics suggests it'll likely run deficits initially, importing capital goods.
But executives remain generally unconvinced by the economist's explanation.
It's a persistent intuitive error. Maybe representativeness investment looks like it should lead directly to exports, or just a strong common sense feeling that overrides the actual economic logic. System 1 strikes again, even among seasoned pros.
Okay, so if we accept that humans are, well, predictably irrational, swayed by loss aversion, certainty effects, all these biases, what's the solution? How do we make better decisions?
That's the constructive part. If the irrationality is predictable, as prospect theory and related work show, then we can design systems and environments to work with our psychology, not against it.
We can anticipate the pitfalls.
Exactly. We can improve decisions, as the sources say, by building solutions that account for our cognitive shortcuts and biases.
Like the idea of nudges from Feller and Sunstein.
Precisely. Their book Nudge makes the case that architectural solutions, meaning how choices are presented, can have a much bigger impact than just telling people what to do, making the good choice easy or even automatic.
It's about the choice architecture.
Right. And the green energy default example is perfect. You automatically enroll people in the green energy plan, but they can opt out if they want.
And what happens?
Many more people end up with green energy. They just stick with the default, even if it costs a bit more. Inertia is powerful.
So it leverages our tendency to stick with the status quo?
Definitely status quo bias.
Uh-huh.
Plus, the default acts like a social signal. This must be the normal or right thing to do. And maybe even loss aversion kicks in. Opting out feels like losing something, the green status perhaps. It makes a desired outcome the path of least resistance for our lazy system too.
Clever. Using our biases for good.
That's the idea behind nudging. And beyond individual nudges, Kahneman talks about organizational cognitive repairs.
Meaning fixes within companies or systems.
Yeah. How organizational practices can compensate for individual shortcomings, designing processes to mitigate bias.
Like using checklists. Atul Gawande's checklist manifesto comes to mind.
Exactly. Checklists aren't just memory aids. They force a systematic approach, countering overconfidence, ensuring critical factors aren't overlooked due to confirmation bias or just being rushed. Kahneman himself co-authored HBR articles on structured decision-making processes for big strategic choices.
So it's about building systemic checks against individual bias, like premortems or assigning a devil's advocate.
Those are great examples of cognitive repairs. Instead of just hoping leaders will be rational, you build rationality, or at least bias awareness, into the process itself. You acknowledge fallibility and design around it.
And this whole idea of predictable irrationality, it applies to our personal lives too, right? Especially ethics.
Oh, absolutely. Clayton Christensen's point about the just this once fallacy is incredibly relevant here.
Thinking on a marginal basis, he calls it.
Right. Applying that marginal cost, thinking, oh, the cost of doing this one little wrong thing is so small to our personal lives. Rationalizing bending the rules just this once.
It seems so harmless at the time.
That's the trap. Christensen says the price of doing something wrong just this once usually appears alluringly low. It suckers you in. You don't see the long-term consequences, the slippery slope.
That feels very related to short-term thinking, system one again. And maybe loss aversion, avoiding the immediate pain of doing the right but hard thing.
I think so. Time discounting, valuing the present much more than the future, combined with maybe avoiding the immediate loss of convenience or social standing. That tiny first step, rationalized away, makes the next slightly bigger step seem less significant. It's how integrity erodes.
A really powerful everyday example of predictable irrationality leading us astray. We've all been tempted by that, I'm sure.
It's deeply human.
So the impact of Kahneman's thinking, it's clearly not just academic, it's influencing policy, business.
Definitely. On the policy front, the sources mention rapid progress in the UK using measures of well-being in official government policy. People like Lord Richard Layard have pushed for this.
Moving beyond just GDP.
Exactly. Acknowledging that economic growth doesn't automatically equal happiness or well-being. It's a direct application of behavioral insights, understanding that subjective experience matters, and policy should try to improve it, not just assume economic gains will do the trick.
Recognizing that how people feel about their lives is a valid policy goal, influenced by psychology, not just income.
Precisely. It requires understanding framing, reference points, loss aversion in how policies are perceived and experienced.
And in business, we see this push for prediction, how Varian's certainty for profit.
Yeah, Varian foresaw that businesses would move beyond just collecting data towards actively using it for prediction. Better monitoring, personalization, continuous experiments, all aimed at understanding and shaping customer behavior.
So companies use our predictable patterns against us, or, well, for their benefit.
You could put it either way. They use vast data analysis to understand our habits, our biases, our likely responses. Then they tailor offers, ads, experiences, personalization, and customization to nudge us towards buying.
Like those eerily accurate online recommendations.
That's part of it. They're building behavioral models based on our past irrational clicks and choices, leveraging insights related to things like loss aversion, fear of missing a deal, or the certainty effect, preferring a sure discount. Understanding our predictable decision-making becomes a core business strategy.
It's powerful stuff. Sometimes a bit concerning, maybe?
It can be. It highlights how deeply these behavioral insights are being embedded into the commercial world, actively shaping our choices.
Which really brings our deep dive full circle.
It does.
So let's recap. We've journeyed through Daniel Kahneman's work, seeing how it moved us way beyond that simple model of the purely rational human.
Yeah, we looked at System 1 thinking that fast, intuitive, often biased system. Things like the effect heuristic, where mood skews our view of risk.
And the law of small numbers seeing phantom patterns like the hot hand, all leading down these paths of predictable irrationality.
And crucially, we dove into prospect theory, that Nobel-winning insight into how we actually handle risk, dominated by loss aversion hating losses more than we like gains.
Right, and the certainty effect overvaluing sure things. We saw how this plays out everywhere.
From investors caught by the speculative bug ignoring odds.
To Wall Street executives making catastrophic errors, as shown in The Big Short.
Even experienced business leaders falling for intuitive economic myths. It provides such a powerful lens on why we make the choices we do, especially when risk and uncertainty are involved.
But it's not all doom and gloom. Understanding these patterns helps us design solutions, right? Like nudges, using defaults for good.
Or organizational cognitive repairs, like checklist, to make decision processes more robust.
And recognizing personal pitfalls like that just this once thinking.
It's influenced public policy, business strategy. It's truly reshaped how we think about thinking.
A fundamental shift in understanding ourselves.
Absolutely.
So we'll leave you, our listeners, with this final thought to chew on. Given these deep-seated patterns, especially loss aversion, our weird relationship with probability, how might you apply these lessons?
Yeah, what's one small cognitive repair, maybe, or a nudge you could set up for yourself in your personal life or work to better align your choices with what you really want long term?
Instead of just reacting based on those predictable biases around gains, losses, and risk.
Something to think about. Start noticing those invisible forces shaping your own decisions. It's fascinating stuff.